Well, greetings, my beloved clients and friends. I want to continue on the theme that we've been talking about the last two videos, which is our investment strategy. Like I said, it's been a kind of a buy and hold good companies that are generating a lot of cash and have been doing it for a while. And it seems like their prospects are pretty good for doing it a longer while. And one thing I said about these great companies, one, there's not a lot of them, so when you find one, you want to hold on to it. It's not like they're a dime a dozen. They're not. You can't just trade in and out to the next one because there's not that many of them. But the other thing I mentioned about them is that they are bigger than the current news cycle. They are bigger than the weather, politics. They're a company that fundamentally provides a good or service that it doesn't matter if inflation is high or low or rising or falling or unemployment or the global what's going on globally and who's in the White House and the election cycle. And these companies have something that is bigger than that. Okay, so Warren Buffett once made a statement about his approach to investing. He said, if I was in the Fed Board of Governors meeting, which I'm not, but if I was sitting in the meeting right next to the Fed chair and he told me what he was going to do the next 6 months, he said it would not change my investment policy one iota. He said that's not what he's looking at. Okay, so, and yet if you turn on the news, 90% of what they talk about is these current events, current political events, current economic events, current market events, right? The current winds of the market or the economy or society in general, even on investment channels, right? Especially on investment channels. So there's my background is economics, and there's two basic subsets of economics, and that's macroeconomics and microeconomics. And you could say macroeconomics is top down, and microeconomics is bottom up, and I'll explain that a little bit. So when macroeconomic subjects are things like GDP, inflation, interest rates, global trade, balance of payments, and also there's a department in the government that produces these reports, and we get these in the office and we look through them and stuff. And the unemployment numbers came out and the inflation numbers came out and all these reports, and that's a place where a lot of economic graduates go work to produce all this economic data. And then the investment community, they're very in touch with that data, and they're a lot of, if you're a macro guy, a top-down guy, a global guy, they make investment decisions based on that. They say, okay, given the current nature of the economy, what countries would do best? And within those countries, what industries would do best? And then maybe drill down, okay, within that industry, what company would be best? So it's like a top-down, right, approach to investing. And should I switch countries because of the changing exchange rates or the changing interest rates or the changing political dynamics that I'm invested in? Should I change industries, and should I move money around because as the winds change, I want to change with them, right? And people ask me questions. I saw this in the news. What are we doing about it, Jonathan? Are you making any changes because of this, right? And because if you watch the news, you get a huge dose of macroeconomic data, and and you want to react to it, and they want you to react to it. That's why they put it on there, because like I said before, the more you trade in and out, the more Wall Street makes. If you just buy and hold, they don't make any money. So they want to encourage a macro outlook, because it encourages more trading, which makes them more money. Now the other side of economics, which is microeconomics, which is bottoms up, okay, where you look at things at the company level first, okay. And one thing that you're taught in microeconomics, that you're taught about competition, and that perfect competition takes away profits, right? If you're in a perfectly competitive industry, you can't earn oversized profits, because the minute you do, a competitor will come in and bring your profits down. They'll underprice you by a little bit, So from a microeconomic standpoint, they say a monopoly company, on the other hand, it can continue to earn higher profits, because it has some kind of barrier to entry that keeps those competitors out, so that they could continue to earn higher profits. And I kind of think about like the drug industry. They didn't go to economics school, but they understand that, this is my corner, and if I could keep competitors off my corner, I could make more money, even if I have to resort to violence, right? I want to create barriers to entry, so that I could earn better profits, right? And we want companies obviously to do that legally, and some companies just have a natural barrier to entry based on several different things. But what I'm trying to say is that in our office, we spend more time on the bottoms up, and so it could feel awkward, because you're like, Jonathan, why aren't you reacting to every headline when you're managing my portfolio? Because we're not a top-down manager, we're a bottoms-up manager. And if I were to illustrate the difference between macroeconomic investing and micro economic approach, it would be like my macroeconomics, or top-down investors, are like sailors. They're on a boat with a sail, right? And they're trying to catch the wind, and the wind changes. And if you ever seen sailing, it's exciting. I mean, you could watch the America's Cup, and these boats are sailing, and there's skill to it, and there's a lot of movement and activity. And these guys, they have to have shoes with good traction, because they're all over the boat, and they're taking ropes down, and they're putting ropes up, and they're adjusting the sails, and they're moving in and out, and they're leaning off to the side to balance this thing into the wind, and they're cutting into the wind, and they're going with the wind, because the wind is what drives them, right? And that is, in my mind, a picture of the market, especially people with that global macro approach, or that macro top-down, worrying about inflation. Oh, what did inflation do? And, oh man, and you have to adjust the sails in and out, because inflation was up, or we had a hot read, and what's Powell doing, and what's Trump doing, and this and that, right? And you're like a salesman, not a salesman, a sailor, in and right, adjusting to the winds, and super dependent on the winds, right? And trying to catch the winds. And and they use analogies, like one of the biggest motifs in retirement planning, if you try to pull a generic picture, it's like sailing off into the sunset. But man, sailing is not relaxing as it shows in the video. It's like, and the pictures, it's hard work, and you're up and down. If you really want to, catch the wind, and imagine if you were trying to cross the Atlantic like Christopher Columbus did on the 3 sailboats, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, right? he had to be really good at navigating the winds. I don't know if he had guys that were rowing as well, but I've seen the ships and they have these big sails on them, you know. So I'm an Army guy. I'm not a Navy guy, so excuse me if my analogies of sailing is not perfect, but I understand that sailing is a lot of work, and if there's no wind, you're not going anywhere. You're waiting for the wind, and if the wind is cross, you have to wait, and you are dependent upon the wind. Now compare that to, say, an aircraft carrier or a container ship. No sails. So how do they move? You know what they have? An engine. An engine propels that vessel. Okay, and they have propellers and a rudder and an engine. So if I was to analyze a container ship, I would want to go down into the, what do they call it, the hull, and analyze the engine, right? I would check that vessel for leaks, because that's what's going to move me, right? So as a macroeconomics guy, that's what we do. I read the K's and the Q's, they call them, the 10 Q's and the 10 K's. I listen to the earnings calls, and sometimes when we sit down and meet with the senior management, we go out and we look at the company, because we're looking for great, not sailing sailboats, but we're looking for great, like a ship, maybe a fleet of 20 ships that are going to get us across this sea, which is called retirement planning. And we're more concerned about the engine of this ship. Okay, so do the winds affect these big ships? Does the pilot of these big ships have to be aware of the winds? Sure, to some degree, but he has to be really concerned about how is his engine running? Does he have a solid engine? Does he have enough fuel? Is that engine turning the propeller, right? Because that's what's going to move him across that ocean. Okay, and he doesn't really have to be reading the ticker on a second by second basis. So I hope that gives you a perspective about what we're trying to do and why we're not so worried about, why we're not so reactive to the day-to-day shifts of winds of the news and politics. I was talking to a client. I said, Clinton, whether you like Democrats or not, he was on the financial side. He was fiscally conservative, and through his term, he ended up balancing the budget and cutting down the size of government and generating a surplus. But guess what? As soon as he got out, the next guy ran it back up. So if you're if you're fearful that the budget is too high, or you're excited that it might be cut and get balanced, and maybe it will, and maybe it won't. But even if it does, that doesn't mean the next guy is going to mess it up, So, interest rates are going to go a certain direction, and then they're going to go the other direction. The one thing we know is that these things move in cycles. The business cycle and the market cycle and interest rate cycles and the fear and greed cycles. And that's inevitable. We have to deal with that. So, yeah, we like a ship with a big, strong ballast, so it's not swayed by these things. But we're more focused on the quality of that engine. Then we can stay with this ship for a long time. It'll get us across many seas. And the thing about those massive, huge container ships, and think about how much cargo they move. And I didn't know this until recently, but their crew is often like 8 or 10 people on that massive ship. So, I've been to Warren Buffett's office in Omaha, Nebraska on Farnham Street. And it's in this building called the Hewitt Plaza. He doesn't even own the building. And the building isn't even that fancy. The building that my office is in is way fancier than that building. It's just a generic, I think it's like a 4-story office building. And he occupies like 1 floor. And there's no floor for a bunch of traders. And he doesn't, I don't even, for the longest time, he didn't even have a Bloomberg. That's this thing that we have in the industry that gives us all the news and stuff. And when he did get it, he didn't put it in his office. He put it outside. He's in Omaha. He's not in New York or on the pulse of what's going on minute by minute, because that doesn't matter to him. He's just looking for a handful of great companies, and it's worked very well for him. And I just want to assure you that I'm not impervious to the gyrations of the wind of the markets and the economy and stuff like that. I'm knowledgeable about that. We keep an eye on it, and we have a Bloomberg on a feed in our office, but 90% of that stuff is white noise. When they start talking about, they get a CEO on there and he's talking about his company, and then my ears perk up and I start to listen. So just so you understand our approach and what we do and why we do it, and we think it's a less bumpy ride for our clients, because in the end of the day, they want, I think, wouldn't you feel, I have some clients that are retired now, and they're always going on cruises, and these are some of these clients that like to go on cruises are a little bit nervous about, and they call me a lot, and I'm like, do you get on a sailing ship? I like that when you go on these cruises, or do you get on this big, huge ship with no sails but a huge engine, and the captains are running that thing? I kind of want to say, that's what I'm doing for you. We're not on a sailboat. We don't have to worry about these daily winds. So I hope that gives you some insight into our approach, and I'm trying to kind of flesh out the story about why we don't do a lot of trading, why we just buy these big names and hold them for a long time, why we don't shift dramatically with every shift of wind. And I'm not the first guy that's done it before. And here's the other thing about this approach. There is not as many people doing it. Everybody in the industry is watching the winds. So even if you wanted to be a sailor, it's way more competitive over there. It's a way more crowded game. You know what I mean? There's somebody watching the news more than you are, and so even if I were to want to do that, to compete in it, it's way. There's this book called Blue Ocean Strategy. It's just a red ocean, very crowded. On this other side, it's maybe not as sexy and not as, you can't talk about it for 24 hours live stream on Bloomberg. There's not that much to say. I can only do a video once a week, so, and only 15, 20 minutes of that. So that's the other thing I like about this strategy. It's less crowded. There's more opportunity to be good at it, and it's a little bit, well, I was gonna say it's harder to learn. So there's not a lot of new guys coming out of school doing it, because in school they teach the other one, so you come out of school better prepared to go into that market. This one takes a lot more time and experience and reading and thinking and slowing down, which is not the common choice for the new guys coming out of school. So hope that gives you a little insight into what we're doing, and kind of up with what I want to say. But we'll be back with you shortly. Hope you guys have a great day and a great week. And it was funny because I was thinking about this subject last week, and then like the last 4 days have been very windy. So I'm sure clients are saying, Jonathan, what about the winds? And so, you know, it's kind of timely. Anyway, have a great day, guys.